Now we're on Daf Pei Beis Amud Beis. Or did I skip something? 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry. We're still on Pei Aleph Amud Beis. I turned the Daf prematurely. Let's see the Gemara. The Gemara wants to know that if he shechted the two offspring of the same mother, and then afterwards he shechted the mother. So the Mishnah says in such a case he violates one set of malchus for shechting the mother. Amai oso vespino amrachmana velo benovi oso. How could it be that he gets any set of malchus? The Torah says oso, meaning the mother, and then in sequence beno. But here he shechted the two calves first and the mother second. Lo salkataita. Don't even let this enter your mind. To Sanya, we learned in the Brisa, Oso Vespino, Ein Liela, Oso Vespino, in that sequence, Oso Ves Imo Minayin. What if he slaughters the offspring first, and only then he slaughters the mother? Shu Omer Lo Sishchatu, in the plural it says Sishchatu, Harekan Shnayim. Okay, said, how could you be violating two? And the answer is, Echad HaShochet Sapara, the Echad HaShochet es Ima, V'echad HaShochet es B'na. Shnayim Achronim Chayavim. One person shechted the mother, another shechted the mother of the mother, and a third person shechted the B'na. Shnayim Achronim Chayavim. So what do you see clearly from this brisa? It doesn't matter which was slaughtered first, the offspring or the parent. And therefore, when the Torah used the word tishchatu in plural, and who are these two people that shechted and engendered an Iser of Oso Vespino with Malchus? Somebody shechted a cow, and then afterwards somebody shechted the mother of the cow. So the offspring was shechted first. Okay, Shochet es Bina is the classic sequence of Oso v'es Bina. But what about the Echad Shochet es Ima, who shechted the mother after the shechita of the offspring? Why is he chayv malchus? So you see that the sequence doesn't matter. So the Gemara says, "Haimi boile legufe." Right? You want to base yourself on the fact that it says lo sishchatu, but I need that pasuk just to tell me that you're not allowed to shech the child. So the Gemara answers him, "Kain lichtov lo sishcha." Why didn't he say it in singular? My lo sishchatu. Why did he use the plural? In order to teach us that even if you shechted the mother after the offspring in the opposite sequence, nevertheless you're chayav for that as well. Frekta Gemara, vakati mi boile. I still need lo sishchatu. Because I lo sishchatu hava min chad in shrei lo. What happens if two different people shechted the offspring? I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. If one person shechted the mother and another person shechted the offspring, how do I know that he's chayav? He didn't do the shechita of the mother. He didn't do Osav Espino. The answer is because it says Lo Sishchatu in the plural. Afilu Trey. So now we're stuck. We got a problem because we need Lo Sishchatu in the plural to teach us that even though Reuven was the one who shechted the mother and Shimon was the one who shechted the son, nevertheless Shimon is chayav. So you can't use the plural to teach you that the sequence is irrelevant. In Cain, if we only needed Lo Sishchatu in the plural to teach us that you could have one person who did the first shkita and the second person did the second shkita, is lichtov, it should have said Lo Yishachetu. Again, I'm not a Baki and Digduk, but I think Lo Yishachetu is in the Hispael. Not you shouldn't slaughter, but they shall not be slaughtered. And that's telling you that we don't care, who did the shchita of which animal, mother or the child. But my Lo Sishchatu, again, if you take a look, he changed the yud to a tuf. Lo Sishchatu is referring to the people, and Shma Mino Tarti. So we can learn two things from that Lo Sishchatu. If it would have said Lo Yishachetu, we could learn that it could be two people. One person did this shchita and the other person did the other shchita, and the second guy is chayim. And now it says Lo Shishchatu in the plural, and that's going to teach us that it doesn't matter what sequence they shechted the animals. The Mishnah says Shchatov es bat bita. Right? If he shechts the middle, after shechting the grandmother and the granddaughter, now he shechts the daughter, and he gets 40 malchus, but Sumcha says no, he gets 80 malchus, because when he shechts that middle generation, he has violated two different forms of the lav of Osav Espino. He violates Osav Espino vis-a-vis the mother, and Osav Espino vis-a-vis the child. Amalei Abayler of Yosef. My time at the Sumchus, what's the underlying principle of Sumchus? Kosaver Sumchus, Ochal Shnei Zeisei Chelev. Behelim Echad, Chayev Shtei Chatos. A person forgot that you're not allowed to eat Chelev. Or maybe he didn't identify this as Chelev. He went ahead inadvertently violating the Isur twice by eating one kazayis of chalev and then another kazayis of chalev. So Sumchus holds in this case chayiv shtei chatos. Right, now keep in mind chalev is an Isur kares, and therefore if you do it b'shogeg, you got to bring a korban chatos. Here in this case, you got to bring two korbanos chatos, one for each kazayis chalev. Even though he forgot both of them under one helen, one forgetfulness. It wasn't like he forgot 8 kazayis, then remembered, and then again forgot an 8 a second kazayis. So what we have here in this case, now I'm going to assume that when it says Ochal Shnei Kazei Chelev, it means in one fell swoop, meaning there was no pause. It was one continuous achila of 2 kizesim of chelev. And if that be the case, then by integrating the 2 kizesim, because there was no pause in between them, it's like one Maisa Avera with 2 violations. And that's exactly parallel to our case where he shechts the middle generation, the daughter, after having shechted the mother and the granddaughter, because again, it's two violations in one maisa. We could, in our parlance, we call it one fell swoop. And Sumcha is going to say he gets two sets of malchus, and that parallels the two chatos in the case where he ate in one retzef, we call it one continuity, he ate two kizesim of chaylev. But here's where we get to the crunch of the sugya. And what I'm about to introduce here is the main concept for the rest of the day, rest of the daf. And that is this shnei gufim and guf echad. Chaylev, because it's not a live being, is called guf echad. But also vesbino, vis-a-vis the grandmother and the granddaughter, is called shnei gufim. And logically, we could accept sumchus when there's a machalik. Again, it would take us to learn a large part of Shas to define what a machalik is. But a machalik means that gufim mechulakim, for example, let's say a man has a relationship with two nidos, not knowing that either one of them was a nida. He's going to bring two chatos. Why? Even though he's violating the same avera over and over again, but it doesn't matter. It's gufim mechulakim. Each nida is a separate guf. So in the case of Oso Vespino, we have gufim mechulakim. And there it's a little bit more justified and logical to accept sumchus that in gufim mechulakim, he really did two averos, even though he did them simultaneously, but he did two averos. This also Vespino and this also. So gufim mechulakim. And that's when sumchus is going to say that he's chayav two sets of malchus. The bigger chiddush would be in the case of chelev, which is not gufim mechulakim, and nevertheless, Sumcha says he has to bring two chatos. So, in a sense, that leads us to the Gemara's next question: Ubedinu delishmina bialma. Why did Sumchus appear in the Mishnah only here in the case of Osav Espino, which is gufim mechulakim? When Sumchus applied his logic that you could be chayiv twice for one maisa all over the place, even when it's not gufim mechulakim, like, for example, the case of chelev. So let's answer why Sumchus wanted to tell us here in Oso Vespino, which is the case of Guf Mechulakim, that you chayiv twice. Lo diacha kochan derabbanan the afal gav the Guf Mechulakim patri rabbanan. The rabbanan, even in the case of Gufim Mechulakim, like the case of Oso Vespino, they still say that the maximum you could be chayiv for is only one, because you only did one maisa, even though you violated the avera twice. But with one maisa, and therefore you only are punished in malchus for once. 1 cent of malchus. Even in the case of gufim mechulak. So this is all Abai's presentation, and Abai now continues, and he says, you know what? Maybe there's another way of going. Oh, Dilma Kasav Sumchis, Achal Shnei Zeisi, Chelev Helam Echad, Eino Chayv Ala Achas. Maybe in general, when it's guf echad, Sumchus would agree that you can only be chayiv one, and therefore in the case of chelev, which is all one guf, Sumchus would have to concede that you're only chayiv one chatos. But hacha, here's where he says you chayiv shtayim. Hainu, what's the reason? Hoil the gufim mechulak. So basically, Abaye is vacillating on the following question: did Sumchus make a universal statement, whether it's guf echad, whether it's, let's start the other way, whether it's Shnei Gufin, or even if it's Guf Echad, or no, Sumchus was only talking about Gufim Mechulakim. And this is where Abai vacillated, he didn't know how to interpret Sumchus. Just 1 second, if we... I don't understand one thing. Ah, you see what we said before that if um if you eat two zesim of chalev in one fell swoop, then Sumchus would say Yechayiv Shtayim. That's only according to Abai's first side, that even in Guf Echad, Sumchus would say Yechayiv Shtayim. Amalei, Rav Yosef answers Abai, he says, in Kasavachol Shnei Zeisi Chayliv, Ve'elim Echad Chayiv Shtei Chatos, and how does Rav Yosef know such a thing that Sumchus would hold? Even in the case of Guf Echad, like the case of Shnei Zeisi Chayliv, even so, we're going to apply the principle of double chiyuv for one maisa. You're going to get two chiyuvim for each kizayis chelev. How do I know this? Says Rav Yosef from a brisa. The brisa says azoreh kilayim kilayim loke. So it means that he planted kilayim twice, and it says loke. Now, what does loke mean? Does loke mean he gets one set of malchus, even though he planted twice? Or does loka mean he gets two sets of malchus? So where it says Ilaim loka achas, if it means only one, pshita. Obviously, for Kalayim you get malchus. So what did you gain by telling me, by doubling it up? Kilayim he gets malchus. Ella, and another point, the owed my Kilayim, right? The fact it doubles. Ella pshita to stay malchios. We're talking about a case where he planted Kilayim twice. And again, we're not talking about a live being like the case of Nida or the case of the two animals of Osav Espino. So therefore it's Guf Echad. And he gets two sets of Malchus. If they gave him Asra, don't plant this Kilayim. And he went ahead and he planted. Then they gave him a second Asra, and he don't plant Kilayim, and he planted Kilayim again. It's Pshita. Then for sure he gets two sets of Malchus. Tanina, and we have it in a Mishnah. Nazir shosa yain kol hayom. Imagine the Nazir is violating the Isur Shtiyas Yain the entire day. How many sets of Malchus does he get? He may get 1,000,000 Malchus. Why? The whole day they told him, don't drink a revius of yayin, and he kept drinking a revius of yayin. Is chayv kol achas v'achas. He's going to get an unlimited amount of malchus until he drops dead. Well, no, you have to do a hamada, so he shouldn't die from it. Anyway, so we can't be talking about a case where he got a hasra for kilayim, and then he planted kilayim. Then he got another asra and he planted kilayim again. That's for sure. He's chayev shtayim, and he's going to be chayev like the case of a nazir that they gave him asra. Don't drink wine. Then they gave another asra, and they gave another asra. It must be that we're talking about a case where he planted kilayim twice, but bevas achas. In other words, there was no hasra in between. So now, exactly what would be the hasra achas? Let me just see if he adds anything. So it seems that the pshat in hasra achas is that he really only warned him once, and he said, if you violate the planting of kilayim, you're going to get malchus. But he went ahead and, as the Gemara calls it, bivas achas means in one maisa, he violated kilayim twice. Now, how can you violate kilayim twice with one maisa? You got to be pretty agile to accomplish that goal. So Rashi says that he used his two hands. With one hand, he mixed a kernel of one of the 5 species of grains together with a grape seed, and with his other hand, he did the same thing. I don't know, Rashi, for some reason, we don't know exactly why, but he says with his other hand, he used a different grain. The first one, he used wheat with grape seed, the second one, barley with grapes, but it doesn't matter. And now we have a case of guf echad. Why? Because wheat and grape seeds are not living beings, and we only apply gufim mechulakim to living beings. Now, he planted two separate hazras kilayim simultaneously with one hasra. And he's going to get two sets of malchus. Mani, who's the author of such a Mishnah? Such a price. Elam Rabbanon. What are you talking about? Rabbanon went to the other extreme. They said that even in the case of Osav Espino, which is Gufim Mechulakim, you only get one set of malchus. Elam Rabbanon de Pligele de Sumchus Hashta. Now, Uma Hasam de Gufim Mechulakim in the case of Osav Espino. Is Patre Rabbanon, the Rabbanon say he only gets one set of malchus. Is Hacha here in the case of Guf Echad, when the wheat and grapeseed and the barley and grapeseed are all one guf, is therefore lo kolshkein. Certainly, it should only be chayv once. How can you get two sets of malchus ella? We have no choice but to assume that it's sumchus. And here we see that sumchus holds that even in the case of chad gufa, of one guf. So imagine he violates one guf, one hasra, and simultaneously he violates the aver twice, and he gets, according to Sumchus, two malchus. So therefore, Rav Yosef says to Abaye, I can prove to you that side in your vacillation, namely that Sumchus went as far as to say that he gets two sets of malchus even beguf echa. Lo, liolam Rabbana. We're going to go back to the Rabbana. Now this is wild, because how could the Rabbana say you get two sets of malchus? The answer has to be he got two separate hasros. He got a straw not to mix the barley with the grapeseed. He went ahead and he did it. They gave him a second asra. Don't mix the wheat kernel with grapeseed and plant it. And he did that. Gets two sets of malchus. I mean, that's exactly like the case of the yayin of a nazir. You know, he gets to altish the yayin over and over and over again. So my kamashmalan. Well, it says milsag of urchi kamashal de ika trey gavni kilayim. Ulafuki min Ravashi, Tiyomer Rav Yoshia, Tiyomer Rav Yoshia, Sheyizra Chita Usaora Vechartzon B'Mapolis Yad. According to Rav Yoshia, you're only chayav a lav of kilayim if you plant wheat, barley, and grapeseed in one mapolis yad, one thrust of the hand. You threw them all in together under the ground. Kamash malon the chizora chita v'chartzon useora v'chartzon nami mechayev, that he's chayev for planting wheat and grapeseed, or barley and grapeseed, and he doesn't have to plant all these three: wheat, barley, and grapeseed. Wheat and grapeseed is enough to incur the violation. Barley and grapeseed is enough to incur the violation against Rav Yoshi. Okay, now we're going back to Sumchus. Toshma. Okay, where's this Mishnah? Later on in Masechet Chullin. Ochal mizeh kizayis umizeh kizayis. Oh boy, now we're getting into the sugi of Gid Anoshe. We'll have a whole parak on Gid Anoshe. So we're getting a preview of Gid Anoshe. Now it seems that the Gid Anoshe, again, we have to go back to our anatomy 101. It appears on two sides of the thigh of the animal, on the right side and the left side. And of course, if you eat a kizayis of the Gid Anoshe, you get malchus. He ate a kizayis from each one of the two sides. And the Tanakama here of this Mishnah, which we'll learn later on, it's Hashem, holds that he's Sofik Esmonim, he gets two sets of malchus. because he ate a kazayas of Gidanosh, and then he ate another kazayas of Gidanosh. And both sides, the left side and the right side, are Gidanosh. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eino Sofik El Arbon. He only gets one set of Malchus. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda holds that the sciatic nerve that the Torah prohibits, that sinew, is only on one side. We're not sure. Is it the one on the right side or the one on the left side? Now, even though the Torah didn't prohibit the other side, again, we don't know which is the other side, but the Rabbanan prohibited. But on a Deraisa level, only one side is Gidanosha. Will the real Gidanosha please stand up? So therefore, if he eats both from the right side and the left side, then he definitely, without a question, ate the Gidanosha that the Torah prohibited. We don't know if it was the right side or the left side, but he ate from both sides. And therefore, he gets one set of malchus. Hechidon. Okay, now we get into another sugya. This is called the sugya of hasra suffik, which is going to occupy our minds for a while. What happens if they warn him not to do X, but it's not absolutely clear whether the violation of X will in fact halachically incur chiv malchus? So if he eats a kazayas from the left side and the right side, then each one of the hasros that he got was hasra suffik. And therefore the Gemara asks, my time of the Rabbi Yehuda, how could Rabbi Yehuda say that he's chayav one set of malchus, hasra suffik? So again, you have to emphasize the phrase shtei asros. Let's say he got one asra, warning him not to eat gid anosha from, we don't know which side, it doesn't matter, but he gave him asra not to eat gid anosha. And immediately he ate from both sides. In such a case, the Gemara would be satisfied and absolutely complacent that Rabbi Yehuda would say Yechayiv one set of malchus. But here there were two asros. Rabbi Yehuda is committed to the position that if you are not definite in the hasra, and here we can't be definite because on each achila of a kazais, we don't know if he violated the Gidanosha, the right side or the left side. Tanya, how do I know that Rabbi Yehuda's shita is that asra suffik lav shmei asra? The Rabbanan disagree and they hold shmei asra because hika es zeh v'chazer hika es zeh kil es zeh v'chazer hika es zeh o hika shnei v'asachas o kil shnei v'asachas chayav. Rabbi Yehuda omer v'asachas chayav b'zecher zeh patur. Not sure. Is Rabbi Yehuda disagreeing with the Tanakh? Just give me a second here. Yeah. The Tanakhama says that even if he did two separate meisim, right? What's the case? Let's just get the case first. I'm sure you know it, but I'll repeat it. A woman lost her husband when she was pregnant. One second, did I get this right? Again, a woman lost her husband. She got remarried, and now she becomes pregnant. She's pregnant, but we don't know if she's pregnant from the first husband or the second husband. Meaning, she might be the Vlad might be a ben Tesha l'Rishon or a ben Shiva l'Sheni. That's why we have a din of hachana that a woman who loses her husband is not allowed to get married immediately. She has to wait 3 months, but she didn't wait 3 months, so she got remarried after 2 months. So therefore, we don't know who is the father of the child. Is it the first husband or the second husband? Now, if a person curses his father or wounds his father, then he gets misa. I forget which Misa right now. I think he gets skew if I remember correctly. But anyway, that's something we learned in Daf Yomi and Sanhedrin. So now the question is, if he's Makalel or Makib both of them simultaneously, like for example, he takes a long stick and he swipes it against both of them, then it's a Hasras Vada. But if they gave him Hasra for Ruvain and he hits Ruvain, then they gave him Hasra for Shimon and he hit Shimon, then each Hasra is a Safek Hasra. And Rabbi Yehuda says, therefore, in such a case, he would not be Chayev. For a technical reason, it's Hasra Safek. So we see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda maintains the position that Hasra Safek, Lav Shmei Hasra. And therefore, that leads us full square, full back swing to the question that we had before. In the case where he ate a kizayis of Giranosha from the right side. Then they gave him Asra and he ate the kizayis from the left side. Then for sure he violated the Isser of Achilas Giranosha, but each Asra separately was Asra Safek. How then can Rabbi Yehuda say he gets 40 malchus? El pshita b'vasachas ubasrachas. We have to assume that there was one Asra. Don't eat Giranosha. He went ahead and he ate a kazayas of Giranosha from the right side and from the left side. So if Yehuda is going to say he gets one set of malchus, I'm not sure why he gets malchus. Just one second. Well, anyway, for our purposes, all we have to know is it's Hasra's Vadai, because they gave Masra, don't eat Giranosha from these two sides, which he went ahead and he did. And that's like the case where he took a long stick and he hit both fathers. Man Tanakama. But then we have the Tanakama who said that you have two sets of malchus. Who's that? Ilem Rabbanon. Again, we're going to have the same Kavachomer. The Pligele, the Suchas Hashto, Ma Hasam Gufim Mikulokim Patrile, Hachalo Kolshkein. Here we have a case where there's only one goof, because again, Giranosha is not a live being. And certainly with a Kavachomer, the Rabbanon would say you could only get one set of malchus, because if the Rabbanon said in Osov Espino where there's two gufim, nevertheless they argue against Sumchus, and you could only get one set of malchus, how much more so with a Kavachomer in the case of one guf, namely in Giranosha. Ella, we have no choice, but lav Sumchus, it must be Sumchus. And now we're talking about a case of guf echad in Giranosha, and even in that case, Sumchus holds he gets two sets of malchus. And then you might ask, so why did Sumchus tell it to me in the obvious case of Oso Vespino? So what was the answer? I just slipped my mind for a second. Right. Lo diach hakochan de rabbanon. Right. Okay. So Gemara rejects it. Lo. The olam bazecher ze virabbanon. He got two asros. One for the sinew on the right and one for the sinew on the left. And after each asra, he violated that one, ate the sinew on that side. So why does he get two sets of malchus? Hi, Tanis Savrleki Idach Tanu Rabbi Yehuda. The Omar Hasra Safek Shmei Hasra. One second, I don't get it. Li'olam v'zecher zeh v'rabbanon. Ah, the Rabbanan of Rabbi Yehuda hold that we know exactly where the sinews are, and on both sides they get anosha, and therefore he definitely ate get anosha twice, and he's chayiv two sets of malchus. No, I messed up. The olam b'zecher zeh. Yeah, so it's okay, no? Let's go over the logic. We're holding now that when he eats both sinews on both sides, he definitely violated Gid Anosha, and therefore he gets Malchus for Gid Anosha. He got two Asros. Each one is Asros Safek. The answer is Ti Omar Asros Safek Shmei Asro. Visanya, very quickly, we'll just finish the daf. We have a brisa that says also see Menuad Boker no Menuad Boker Treish Tisrofu. So he violated Isur Nosar. Here we're on Daf Pei Gimel. Because of Litenase Achar Losase. And here we have a machlokus as to why he doesn't get Malchus. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he doesn't get Malchus because it's a lav hanitek liese. Because the Torah says Baish Tisrofu. Lomer Shein Loken Olav. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, no, Loman Hashem, he said, forget about whether or not it's a lav. After all, how do you violate nosar? By leaving the meat of the carbon overnight and you didn't eat it, so there was no mais avera, kol lav shem bo mais and lokin oleo. Now Rabbi Yehuda is saying that if not for the fact that it was a lavanita kliese, then you would get malchus. But every moment that they warn him, it's a suffix. Why? Because he can eat it for the next 12 hours, or in the case of Shlomim, for the next 48 hours, right? So what we're saying is that it's a hasra suffix by definition. It's like, for example, the Gemara has a case, and with this we'll end, in Shavuos, where a person says, I take a Shavuot that I'll eat this kikar this day. It means any point during the day until the sun sets, he can eat it. So whenever we give him Asra, it's going to be Asra Safek, because he may violate Asra, but then a minute later he'll decide to eat the kikar. So here also, in the case of Loso Siri Menurad Boker, okay, we warned him, don't leave it. Okay, he left it, but he might eat it a minute later, or 2 minutes later, or 5 hours later, before the sun sets. So it's Asra Safek. And yet, Rabbi Yehuda says if not for the fact that it was a lav anitakli essay, he would get malchus. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that hasra is suffix shmei hasra. Again, that's according to the Tana of this price. But let's keep in mind that that's not the only transmission of Rabbi Yehuda. We had a different transmission of Rabbi Yehuda that he's only chayav when he hits his two possible fathers if he hits them both simultaneously, because if he hits them separately with a separate asra, it would be asra safek, and that's lav shmei asra. So again, there are two different versions of what the shita of Rabbi Yehuda is. So Rav Osai will stop here. And where are we up to? We're up to Tashma, and we're still trying to figure out whether the sheet of Sumchus is expanded to every single case, even if it's guf echad. Now, what's
Now,
tomorrow?
what time do you want to meet tomorrow?
Wait,
Because we
tomorrow
can do it.
is
We can do it at noon if you like,
tomorrow
because
is
I'm
Tuesday.
busy on Tuesdays anymore.
So from your perspective, Tuesday at noon would be okay. But wait, let me just figure it out. I have yard site tomorrow night, so I have to figure out where I'm going to be for the yard site, to get the helmet and all that stuff, that whole. So let me just look at Pay Gimel for a moment. I'm just going to shut this off for a second. We don't need this on. Oh, maybe I did already shut it off. I don't know. Anyway, so what do we have over here on Pay Gimel? Pay Gimel is Barba Prokim. It's a flat. Oh, Achar Laila. And then what else do we have? What's on Pay Gimel Amud Beis? Pay Gimel Amud Beis is the question of what? Oh, of Mashiach. Mashiach. Yeah. And then we start tomorrow, we make a siyum and we start Kisi Adam, which Rabbi said will start tomorrow. The question is what time we're going to start it. Right. Oh, Pay Gimel's good. So I can do Pay Gimel tomorrow at 9:30. Let's leave it at 9:30.
9:30? Okay.
Yeah, because this way, you know, I got to figure out my day and whether I'm going to be here in Harnov
It's
or
fine.
in Beit Shemesh and for the yard side of my mother. Okay, then. So I'll wish you a good day and we'll see each other at 9:30 tomorrow. Okay? Is that good? Okay, thank you.